Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How's it going, adults?
Not too bad. How are you?
Great. Just sitting in a chair, looking out the window, sitting in the sun. Nothing better.
Very nice. Nothing better.
Looks
I
like
will invite
Cito's
you
in here.
up, Cito.
What's up? Hello, hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Nice. Yeah, I'm also good. Yeah, picking up the preparations for Cosmos already. So gonna have a lot of work in the next coming weeks and months, but I'm excited.
Yeah, just saw that announcement the other day. Istanbul's gonna be super exciting. That's awesome.
Yeah, man. I was just there for a week and like basically the whole team. Basil is still there, one of the co-founders. So we had a lot of meetings, and the community there is just on a different level. Like there's like so much potential to onboard a massive community into Cosmos because they're all in crypto, but they're not aware of Cosmos too much. So that's why I think Cosmos makes a lot of sense, in that area.
Yeah, that's gonna be great. We're super excited.
Nice. Were you in Medellin last year or?
Yeah, Adults and I were actually both in Medellin. It was a great event. Super fun to meet so many community members and other projects in person instead of just over Zoom or on Twitter Spaces or whatever. So
Nice. Yeah, I think honestly, like that's probably something that you can't really measure, but like everybody that's there, just that feeling that there's a big community, you can see them, the people behind the projects, connect with not just retail community, but also like other developers. I think that's very, very valuable for like the cohesion
exactly.
of the whole ecosystem. So glad you liked it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's super important in Web3, especially when so many, even the teams themselves are decentralized and live all over the world, much less like interacting with other teams. It's super important to have these events to bring everyone together, to meet, to spend time together, to make connections in person. So,
Yeah, true.
well, I think we give it another minute or two here, and then adults we can kick it off. We usually start around 11:05 again. Cito, thanks for hopping in. Looking forward to this conversation today.
Yeah, likewise, man. Thanks for having me. And hey, Carter, what's up? Been a while.
Nothing much. It has been a while. I'm excited. I think today, I think it's rare that people get the opportunity to hear kind of the CryptoCito side of the story. We'll say where you're on the other side of the mic. So I would love to pick your brains today about kind of the history of Cosmos and like how you've seen it evolve, some of the biggest problems you think exist today in the Cosmos, and then specifically, I know recently you've investigated like Polkadot, Avalanche, and of course done some comparisons to Cosmos, and like want to know your thoughts on what you found in those communities, what you think Cosmos can learn from them, and where you think things are headed. So just like a cool opportunity for you to put your expertise and connections on display and the story of Cosmos in your mind.
I really like that, man. I also thanks for for sharing the agenda because I didn't really know what we're gonna talk about. But yeah, I also really enjoy being on the other side of the mic, as you say. I think I've been interviewing hundreds of people over the past 2 years now, and it's nice to just sometimes share a little bit about my learning. So yeah, I think that's a good format. So thanks for setting that up.
100%. And yeah, let's see. Don, do we have the tweet out here? I'm just trying to retweet this here. And let's see, there it is. Everyone, be sure to share the tweet on this space. It's gonna be a fun one. CryptoCito as a long-standing community member in the Cosmos, it's gonna be great to run through this today. All right, so 11:05. Let's go ahead and kick things off. Without further ado, CryptoCito, what's your story in terms of getting into crypto? Specifically, what drew you to Cosmos, and maybe walk through the early history of Cosmos in your eyes.
Okay. So yeah, I think I got into crypto early 2017. I was studying back then. Actually, I studied Chinese and economics. So like economics and then Chinese culture and also Mandarin, so the Chinese language. And like how it is when you study at university, that's where you meet people that kind of like want to do something different with their lives. So I met a guy called Chris who would become my best friend, and we would just sit there at night thinking about how students are like, think about the future, think about what's the next big thing. And then we somehow stumbled upon Bitcoin, and I think in the beginning I was like really not excited about it because I didn't understand it. But yeah, with more and more research, I understood also how money works, how banks work, how central banks work, more importantly. So when I understood that, I really enjoyed this idea of decentralization and, virtual currency, blockchain, all these kind of things. So that's how I got into crypto. 2018 obviously has been a very rough year. Everything crashed. But that was the year where I was on an exchange year in China from my university. So that's where I really got deep into crypto, because Shanghai, which is where I was studying, is like the capital of crypto. So there I met a lot of people. I went to a lot of events. Then I also eventually just started doing my own events in Shanghai. So yeah, that was a very key year for me, I would say. And then the idea for like starting a YouTube channel only came when COVID really started. So 2018, 2019, I was really deep in crypto, but just as, researcher, investor, all these things. And back then, you guys have been around. It was horrible. It was really, really bad. So that was a tough time, but it was where I learned the most. And then when I started my YouTube channel, which, again, the time of COVID, I just, had a lot of time at home, like all of us, decided to get a mic and just start making videos. It took me a long time to get any traction, like any content creator in the beginning, but sticked around, always tried to improve, and eventually stumbled upon Cosmos. That was sometime late 2020. And I just made a tweet like, hey, I found some Atom in my wallet. I must have bought them at some point that I don't even remember. And Jack Semplin responded to me, to my tweet. And he's like, man, hey, I want to walk you through what Cosmos is, how IBC works. This was like 3-4 months before IBC went live. So yeah, Jack was really the key that got me into Cosmos. And then I also got a lot of, people that I got in touch with early on, such as Adriana, also other podcasters like Citizen Cosmos. That was also key for me to like really understand and feel welcome in the Cosmos community. And then obviously when Osmosis went live, that was a big event that got me really excited to kind of like go all in on Cosmos. And yeah, I think from there, the rest is history.
So you talk about some of those early years in 2017, 2018, 2019 as being kind of rough because of the markets at those times. And obviously, like, there's some similarities to the current, trend of cryptocurrency adoption, mainstream media, the coverage around crypto and the bear market. So what were the biggest lessons you learned from back then? And then I'm also curious too, on the content creator side, so many people have tried their hand at it and a lot of people don't stick with it. So what do you think was the key for you? Like what drove you to stick around and keep pushing, I guess, so consistently? Because a lot of people have tried and failed.
Yeah, I will start with that. So what I see a lot with other content creators is like they look at the big ones and they say, I'm better than this guy, but they're not really willing to put in the work to, make videos for 2 years that nobody watches, for example, right? Like you really have to be very, very patient. But also at the same time, you need to be very consistent with your content. I also see a lot of people, they just put quantity over quality. So they want to push out as much content as possible. I think it needs to be a healthy mix of being authentic, always being on the watch to improve, whether it's the setup, the audio, the content structure, the format, and really also trying to figure out your niche. Like, what do you want to focus on? Do you just want to read CoinGecko prices or CoinDesk articles? Or is there something that you're truly convinced that this is the next big thing that you also want to be part of, that you spend a lot of time like researching and investing in? Like, what is your kind of like differentiator to other content creators? So I think there's a lot of things that go into it, but I think just being authentic, persistent, and continuous in pushing out content. And that also, by the way, doesn't even just count for content creators. I think that also counts for projects when they, also run their communities. So just find a niche and be continuous about what you're doing. And to answer your first question, which was around the learnings from 2018 or like 2017, 2018, I don't know. I mean, I think back then the market was very different because the tide was just so much lower. There was literally capitulation. there was no liquidity, there was no decentralized world, there was no DEX. I remember I started my first decentralized trading experience on Ether Delta. I don't know if you guys still remember that one. There was a horrible user experience. So there wasn't really much going on. It was a lot of speculation, a lot of, ICO promises, and this is going to be the next big thing. And John McAfee's coin of the week, if you still remember that. So the big learning is really that crypto is still in the early days. And I think, if you compare the space to where it's now in this deep bear market to where it was in 2019 in the deep bear market, the tide is just so much higher. And I think 3 years from now, we're going to have another bear market and the tide is going to be 5 times higher than it is now. So I think the same thing also applies here, is like really see the long-term vision, the long-term impact that crypto also has. So yeah, because also here, like sometimes people are just focused on short-term gains. They want to get rich quick, which is also fair in crypto, right? Like everybody wants to make money, which is something that also can happen. But yeah, I think people need to just be more patient here as well.
I think that's a wonderful answer, the patience and kind of the zoomed out cyclical view of, at the end of the day, we might be taking one step back, but if we took 3 steps forward before, we're still slowly moving the needle forward on the adoption side. So that being said, one part of this last cycle in 2022 had, there was lots of failed experiments, right? One of them specifically was Terra with UST. And one question that I know came up with like the Cosmos was like, what is the role of leadership with saying, this project is good, this project is safe, this project is not safe. So as a content creator, CryptoCito, I know there must be like kind of a burden that you carry and a responsibility with the due diligence that you have to do. And so what is that burden like, and how have you kind of, as a creator and a leader and an influencer, how have you handled that mandated responsibility to be very careful with, this exploration of all these different amazing experiments, some that end well and some that don't?
Yeah, I think that's part of my kind of success of my content, is that I talk a lot to developers, and I talk to a lot of developers. They're actually building stuff that's new, that's innovative, right? We did an interview around, it's been almost a year now, but we've been doing an interview, right? I talk a lot to Jack Sempolin, to like the core developers in Cosmos that have been around for years. And I think Cosmos also has this philosophy that there's a very strong understanding in the development teams to like really focus on quality, which, in some other ecosystems might not too much be the case, that the developers are also out there and like engage with the community. That's very strong in Cosmos. I think in another ecosystem that would be much different. But yeah, I also obviously get a lot of requests from projects that ask me to like shill them in a tweet, and they would give me coins. I have projects constantly reaching out to me with like weird proposals about making videos. So that's always kind of a red flag. And I just ignore these things and kind of like just stick to my research, stick to my methodology, and basically choose also what type of projects I wanna talk to. Vet them also through my network of like developers that I know, that I trust, because I'm personally not a developer, right? So I can't evaluate the code quality, for example. But yeah, so it's really about just being mindful and being careful in that space. But I think it also goes back to kind of like my 5-year experience now in the meantime, being full-time in the space and kind of like being able also to separate a little bit the bullshit from, people that really want to build.
And it really does take 5 years to develop that sense. Like, I think it's one of those, when you first enter the space, like there's so much optimism when you uncover the technology, but then eventually the optimism gets replaced with kind of the pragmatic realization that behind every white paper and every vision is a subset of very fallible people, right? And so you have to figure out whose reputation is legitimate, what people are actually shipping, what people actually believe in security as opposed to just talking about security. So I definitely appreciated the work you've done to navigate all of that noise. And I think the long-form discussion also gives the opportunity for the community to see, where people's priorities are whenever they have the chance to go on your show, so to speak. So yeah, I'll pause there for any other comments.
Yeah, I also wanted to add, that counts both for like content creators, but also just for crypto retail investors, is to like constantly try to like improve their research methodology, right? Like constantly try to see and understand crypto projects from like different angles, because there's so many layers to decentralization. There's so many layers to what makes a project a success, right? There's tokenomics, and there's the code, and there's the validator infrastructure that's underlying it. There's so many layers, and I think with the time, you kind of like you kind of like understand that you have to at least understand some of these things. I obviously still have a hard time sometimes to like understand technical things, because again, I'm not technical at all. I just told you earlier I studied economics and Chinese, which is something completely different. But just to be open and like curious and like willing to put in the work, that's what really makes a big difference. It at least made a big difference for me. So yeah.
One of the most complicated components, I think, of Cosmos when it comes to understanding the value and the quality of the project is governance, right? And I'd imagine you've had a very unique perspective because you've been able to exist on the validator layer. You've been able to exist within the network, being able to talk with all these key individuals, while also being like a half step away from the community, right? You're really at the crossroads of a lot of interesting layers of stakeholders for any given decentralized network in the Cosmos. So let's talk about the challenge of governance. Where do you think Cosmos stands today? Is it a risk? Is it a strength? Where do you predict things to head with governance tooling and the ethos of any given community in the Cosmos tied to governance? What do you see? How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, that's a very, very big question. And I think that's also moving a lot of cosmonauts these days. You mentioned earlier, I did some research about Avalanche and Polkadot. And to be honest, like, and also other crypto ecosystems, I don't think any other crypto ecosystem has such an active and vibrant governance community like Cosmos. So I think even though we sometimes complain about the DPS and, controversial proposals, I think at the end of the day, it shows that Cosmos is alive, right? And I think that's a big plus. But sure, like if you go into details, like how to structure proposals, how to prevent spam, how to make sure the proposals are written in a good way, right? For example, also today we've seen Confio come out to say that they're basically shutting down or like stop their contributions for public goods because they ran out of funds. This could have potentially been prevented through funding, through on-chain governance, those kind of things. But I think there's always room to improve. But on a big picture, I think Cosmos is alive, and that's a good sign.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I had a conversation with Zucky back in December tied to the stablecoin summit we hosted, and he took a stance, something to the effect of pluralism, where everything's on a spectrum and every little micro communities are all going to emerge, and governance, people are going to be able to find the type of governance that they feel best represents them as an individual. So I agree. Governance is definitely alive. It's interesting though, because so you looked into Polkadot, you looked into Avalanche. Walk us through some of the things you uncovered with that research.
Well, I think this conversation would then like move away from governance, but because I like when we talk about governance, I'm not really active in the Avalanche community nor the Polkadot community, so I can't really tell how that works or how that differentiates. But from my observations and conversations I had also with developers and Parity or Ava Labs, the governance there is like more centralized, and you also have core organizations, right? In Avalanche, you have Ava Labs. On Polkadot, you have Parity. Those are like the two big companies that basically run, the roadmap for Avalanche. They run the BD. They run the core, the main conference of the year. And in Cosmos, you have people like, Basil, Yuri, Fabi, and I that just come in and start doing Cosmoverse. And now it's becoming this really big thing. And that's kind of like the equivalent of DEF CON in Ethereum, for example, which is organized by the Ethereum Foundation on the Ethereum side, or IOHK is doing the Cardano Summit every year, right? So I think in Cosmos you have this open contribution from the community, and I think that's really cool. That's also what Cosmos allows, because it doesn't have this centralized leadership. Even though the ICF is kind of like this main entity, but I think they have some internal restructuring and some different directions they want to go. So I think that's a whole different conversation. But yeah, if you talk about like the chain architecture, I think when you would say that, okay, the app chain thesis is really a cool idea, and probably the next big thing, probably also a big narrative. I think neither Polkadot nor Avalanche are like competing with that narrative, because they have a different they have a different architecture, which is kind of like more tied to the main layer of how subnets on Avalanche are, for example, built, or parachains in Polkadot. So I think when you talk about building a really sovereign blockchain economy, nothing comes close to Cosmos. And also when you talk about interoperability, there's nothing like IBC, right? So I think Cosmos is light years ahead there. But yeah, there's still things we can learn from these communities. When we talk about Avalanche, obviously they have strong BD. They just onboard a lot of also corporate partners and institutions, which is kind of like what we're lagging behind in Cosmos. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things. If people are very interested in that specific topic, they should wait for my video, which is coming out end of this week. So there we go.
I'll definitely be giving that a listen. Why do you think that business development has been less like rapid in the Cosmos, in your opinion?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question. And I think the answer is that because of the organizational structure in Cosmos, which I mentioned, we have the ICF, but the ICF is not running Cosmoverse. The ICF is not deciding on the roadmap of Cosmos. It's just independent contributors that are just like together, they're forming the Cosmos BD team and the Cosmos marketing team. Whereas if you look at Avalanche, Ava Labs has a full-time event manager, for example, right? They have a full-time BD and DevRel team, right? They have huge teams and funding, and they're just operating differently. Whereas in Cosmos, you just have basically the same way that Cosmos is an ecosystem of sovereign layer ones. You have a sovereign ecosystem of development teams and contributors that are just doing things on their own because they're excited about Cosmos, which in the end of the day, I personally think that's actually a feature, because that's also more sustainable and leads to more organic growth. But yeah, at the same time, historically, we haven't seen the big announcements. We haven't seen a lot of hype around Cosmos if you compare it to others. So that's something that the community can also get more active and facilitate introductions, educate companies, organizations, other crypto projects about the technology, and provide a pathway for them to get onboarded into Cosmos. So I think that's something that everybody in Cosmos is also somehow aware of, which is why you see now Cosmos gaining more and more traction in the markets.
I think it's one of the most interesting challenges of Cosmos, where like the app chain thesis creates more and more like entropy and distance from the origination, like the very first Cosmos chains that have a lot of the original capital. I mean, I imagine like 2 or 3 years from now, you're going to go to map of zones, and it's going to be like hundreds and hundreds of chains. And so the entropy is just going to scale so quickly, but then a lot of the wealth is concentrated at those original chains. And so a lot of these newer chains are going to, what I'm guessing, are going to struggle to maybe spin up their own business development, just because they're further away from that original capital, and they're going to have to kind of forge their own path. So let's try to like vision, like if you had to put yourself 2 years from now, what do you think Cosmos is going to look like? How do you think interchain security is going to impact, both the politics and security of this very, very distributed system of distributed systems?
Yeah, and to your point, I think what you said is very spot on. In the future, we already see it today, but in the future even more so. We see like all these independent teams, they just have their own BD team. They have their own conference, right? OsmoCon is happening this year, the second time in a row. from the Osmosis team. You have just Axelar doing now the interop around ETH Denver. So there's a lot of like sovereign organizations that just promote Cosmos in the end of the day. And I think that's a big plus because, yeah, that's just how you onboard new users and institutions. But yeah, in the future, well, first of all, I hope Cosmoverse is going to be the biggest crypto conference. We're trying to grow every year. We're trying to become bigger and better, and also onboard non-Cosmos native people to Cosmos. That's why we're also choosing to go to Istanbul this year, which is a giant crypto market. Yeah, and then I think overall you just see a lot of organic adoption. You just mentioned Interchain security. There's already 4 baller consumer zones that will go live as soon as Interchain security launches, which is the native asset issuance chain on which USDC is going to come out. You have Neutron. I just had a call with them yesterday, and what they're building is absolutely amazing, and also how they want to roll it out. Duality, another DEX that is coming to the Cosmos Hub. So I think the Cosmos Hub is now finding its purpose, which is probably to act as a security provider for other zones in Cosmos, to be bootstrapped. And just overall, the ecosystem, I think, will be growing. There will be more Cosmos-based chains, also in the privacy aspect, which is what you guys are doing. I think that's going to be a big narrative also in the coming years. And I also think that IBC will go outside of Cosmos a lot. So we already see Composable, for example, they bring IBC to the Polkadot ecosystem and also to Near. Then I had a call also with Coreum. They're bringing IBC to the XRP ledger. Eclipse is bringing it with the Solana virtual machine. So I think IBC is going really, really like all over crypto and kind of like establishes itself as the trustless or trust mitigated interoperability layer in all over crypto. And that obviously will drag in a lot of eyeballs into Cosmos as a whole ecosystem. So yeah, hopefully we're also going to see more things like what DYDX is doing, migrating onto their own L1. So yeah, I think the future is very bright for Cosmos.
I love that's a great rundown of where we stand today. And I also like that you use the word trust minimized instead of trustless. I appreciate that differentiation. That's a subtle thing not many people would notice, but I appreciate that.
That's just to add to that, like we talked earlier about my learnings from 2017, 2018. And I was always very convinced that everything in crypto is trustless, the blockchain is trustless. But at the end of the day, you still have, that's kind of like the end game of trustlessness. You still have codes, lines of code being written by humans, and you have social layers, you have governance. Like there's still, even though, for example, the whole technology would be completely trustless, you still always have this human aspect to it that could change things, that could interfere, that could exploit bugs, which we have seen so many times last year. So nothing is really trustless, to be honest. It's all just trust minimized at max.
Do you think when people uncover the fact that it's very much a connected layer of trust minimized systems, do you think that it removes some of the optimism or excitement, or do you think people are still able to maintain that optimism and what if we can pull it off factor? Because it's interesting, the deeper you get down, in many ways, the more skeptical one can get of all these systems, but simultaneously it's still such an advancement of where we stand today. So I'm curious how you view that kind of contrast.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like the whole ideology of why do we need distributed ledger technology in the first place, right? And what's the revolution that Bitcoin brought? And actually, as part of my thesis, as I ended my studies 3 years ago, I actually wrote about the digital yuan in China. And part of that was obviously also, blockchain technology, because I was super interested in it. So the big revolution is really that you're kind of like, in the end of the day, just elevating accounting from double entry ledgers to triple entry ledgers. And that alone is already a giant revolution, because now you have ledgers that cannot be corrupted. And even though there's still some sort of element of like human influence, interference, the fact that you have a distributed ledger that can't be corrupted is already huge, right? And I think that's always the base layer of why I'm so excited about crypto. And even though, and that goes back also to what we talked earlier, right? We're still super early. The space is very young. We need much more adoption to get also more and more decentralized, right? Especially in Cosmos. That's maybe also a downside of Cosmos right now is that if you look at the Nakamoto coefficients on the Cosmos Hub, it's like 6 or 7, right? Which is really nothing. So there's still a long way to go to really decentralize every single layer. But the fact that you have a distributed database that cannot be corrupted, like that's a game changer in finance, money. Bitcoin can't go bankrupt. The central banks can go bankrupt anytime. They actually are all in debt, but Bitcoin can go in debt. So that's cool. And I think that's a big revolution here.
I like the return to Bitcoin and the promises and attributes that it gives. As an example, I think it was Sunny that jokingly said that Bitcoin's an app chain, right? With like a very, very specific use case. And so that means,
Yeah, just to that, I remember like the first times I talked to Sunny, like roughly 2 years ago, he always said his original idea why he got so excited about Cosmos, because he actually was an undercover Bitcoin maxi, or kind of still is that the original goal was to really bring Bitcoin into a faster and more interoperable ecosystem, which is actually also what Nomic is kind of like doing right now. So if you really break it down, I think that mission is accomplished, and you can have now Bitcoin, which is an app chain for money, according to Sunny, in a fast, interoperable ecosystem. And I think that's very exciting. And now you just see so much more being built around it. DeFi is emerging, NFTs, right? That's really, really cool. And I think there's like, from there on, the possibilities are just infinite.
Yeah, now we even have the Babylons of the world that are tapping into Bitcoin's security, right? It's so cool.
Yeah, I agree.
So what use cases are you really excited about in 2023? And I guess we can briefly touch on NFTs too, in the sense that, the social layer is a really important part of getting people excited and getting people aggregated around different subcultures. So what use cases are you excited about that Cosmos doesn't yet have? And kind of what are your thoughts on the role of NFTs and those sub communities within the story of Cosmos?
Yeah, I think in general, the Cosmos ecosystem still needs a boost in liquidity when it comes to DEXs, when it comes to DeFi, and also NFTs, obviously. But some of the use cases, like, for example, if we talk about DeFi, that I'm very excited about is to have liquidity outposts on different chains, right? So that you can, for example, tap into osmosis liquidity without having to leave Juno, for example, right? So on the native chain, you have access to liquidity on other chains. I think that's a very cool use case that's coming now to osmosis. When we talk about also bringing IBC to other ecosystems, I'm very excited about that, to also just have this seamless interoperability with other ecosystems. I also just saw that our actual unofficial CEO, Charles Hoskinson, they are now working on a Cosmos-based sidechain for Cardano, which you don't need to be excited about Cardano, but just the fact that there's going to be IBC compatibility with Cardano, there's going to be IBC compatibility with XRP, with Polkadot through Composable, with Solana, right? Those type of things really excite me. I think what you also mentioned with Babylon, that's a cool use case to just leverage security. Anything that deals with enhancing the security of Cosmos chains, I think that's very, very much needed. But I also think there's some real world use cases that I think it's really time for, that we have those use cases and that these use cases also gain traction. For example, thinking about Regen Network, which I think they probably have the best mission in crypto to build a decentralized carbon credit marketplace. But the time might just not be there yet. So I hope that these use cases gain traction, and in the future also more real world applications that we can just use, so that we kind of like go away a little bit from that purely speculative aspect that cryptocurrencies are volatile and you just want to invest to get rich, and more towards having actual utility in the real world.
Yeah, I love the vision you paint of like the fact that IBC is going like there is a path for it to become the de facto, interoperability communication protocol. And it's actually happening right before our eyes. I didn't even know some of the names you name dropped. I wasn't even aware that IBC is going that far out beyond the cosmos, and that's coming from someone that lives and breathes this stuff, full time. So it's very exciting to know that it's that Cosmos is onto something with IBC, and now it's a matter of how can sustainable decentralized finance be built on top of IBC, and how can we do so in a trust minimized and decentralized way.
Yeah, and I also think when we look into gaming, there's a lot of cool stuff that's in the works. Strange Clan, obviously, they're building their game, which takes a long time because they're just trying to build something really big here. But I actually had an interview yesterday with Chihuahua. I don't know if you've seen it. And they're launching the Huawei-verse, which is basically a virtual world powered by and like co-built with the Passage team. And you will have some mini games in there and like NFT elements and a marketplace. And I think that's something very fun, because I think also what we lack in crypto overall is fun. There's so much debates and discussions around funding and governance and this and that. I think everybody sometimes also needs to chill a little bit and play a game on the Huawei-verse. So I'm excited for that. And yeah, just everything that's coming with projects that have been around for years, and also you guys, what you are building, new concepts of stable coins, variations of them. Liquid staking also is a huge thing where we have a lot of options right now in Cosmos. So yeah, there's like so many things. And, I'm same like you, even though I spend so much time in Cosmos every single day, there's projects that I'm not able to cover, that I'm not aware of, that I just heard for the first time. So the ecosystem is just gaining escape velocity at this point, which is a good thing, but it's just hard to keep track of everything.
Yep. One speaking of gaming, one use case I think would be super cool is if there was a set of games in Cosmos and DAOs started to like compete against each other. I'm picturing like a little mini esports team that gets spun up between DAOs. I think like DAO run esports teams, Intercosmos, stuff like that. There's like some crazy ideas that you could really tap into.
Yeah, I think I just had like a similar experience with, or a similar experiment on Juno Network with the blue team and the red team. And I think you could, gamify that and have some cool elements with that, because that's really what is actual adoption, right? If people are just engaged with something, if it's fun, if they spend time like evaluating things, getting involved in things, besides just talking about things and speculating. I think it's time for like real adoption. But I think also in Cosmos, like that's the ethos that not just developers, but also the community has, is that we're really excited about building real things. And if you look into other ecosystems, that's why I really got excited about Cosmos. And I've been in crypto 3 years before I got into Cosmos, but I just haven't seen that spirit, of builders and excitement that I have seen in Cosmos. So yeah, I think this just comes with the time and obviously also with the market turning around. So I think it's just a matter of time, to be honest.
Yeah. So with 7 minutes left before we open things up for Q&A, we've talked a lot about Cosmos, a lot about crypto. I now want to pivot back to like you as a person. What do you like to do for fun outside of crypto? And I know you've done a lot of traveling, and I'd love to hear about some of the things you've learned from all that traveling.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I love traveling. I've been traveling since over 10 years now. I've been to, I don't know, a lot of different countries and cultures. And when I travel, I just love not to, go on the most popular sites and take pictures, but rather to kind of live with the culture, experience the culture. So I lived nearly 2 years in China. That was a big experience for me. And really grateful for that experience. I lived half a year in India, actually, which was probably the craziest experience I ever had, but also the most impactful, and also Colombia. So if you ask me, like, what's my favorite, thing to do is probably just, be in the city of Medellin. That's my favorite city in the world. Hang out there with with my friends. I love shisha, obviously. I think that's very much known right now. So yeah, just explore, discover, live with cultures that are unknown to me or new to me, and just have fun.
So you sit down for coffee in Medellin, and it's you and CryptoCito from 3 years ago. From 3 years ago, what do you say to him?
That's a very good question. Honestly, I feel like a lot of the things that I visualized back then, I kind of accomplished, in that sense that I'm full time in crypto. I have traction with what I'm doing. I love what I do. But at the same time, I think an advice that I would give to myself if I knew where I was going to, in those 3 years, would be to sometimes not take things too serious, and yeah, just to also chill and enjoy more, because like especially the last 2 years, like when we did Cosmos 1 and the time before Cosmos 2, that was like a very, very stressful time and also a very challenging time, because you also have a lot of unknowns, you have a lot of risks, that you're taking. So yeah, I think just give that advice to myself to like sometimes slow down a little bit, not take everything too serious, and trust in like the team and everything, that things will work out fine, because eventually things worked out fine. But I tend to overthink sometimes. So I don't know how about you, but I have that issue that sometimes I'm just driving myself too crazy about things that then don't happen. But
Yeah, I think crypto is really interesting because we have so many motivated, hardworking people, and you in the present moment, it always feels urgent, right? Like we're so tied to like this precise minute, this precise week, this precise month, and there's almost like a healthy disbelief that if we slow down, that the future that we believe can happen won't
yeah,
happen. But I think to your point, there's something to be said about trusting the process and like understanding that the stars are slowly aligning, and that we're all just one individual part of this larger decentralized vision for Cosmos. And it's not a reason to stop working hard, but it is a reason to like take a deep breath and accept that maybe there's more to any one of us than just our own single story, our own success and failure, right?
that's true. Yeah, and I think also one of the biggest downsides, at least in my experience, that for the fact that crypto is 24/7, the blockchain is never off, right? Everything is always on. There's always something, and this space is so fast moving, and there's things happening every single day, right? I remember like when I read the FTX news the day it came out, I was like, this can't be true. Like this has to be a joke, right? And you see this, and you spend so many hours just reading about it, and it drives you crazy. And then it's a Sunday afternoon, and you should be chilling somewhere, drinking coffee or enjoying the weather or whatever, and you're just reading for hours about what SBF did. And it's like this space is really crazy sometimes, and you need to really figure out a way. If you work at a space full time, obviously, you need to find your rhythm to also be able to just disconnect sometimes, which is so hard because everything is just so fast. Twitter is just one tap away, and you're connected to the madness. So yeah, it's a very hard task, at least for me, to like just sometimes disconnect and chill.
This too shall pass is like kind of the phrase I try to circle back on. I remember when UST collapsed, I went out, it was like midnight, went to a restaurant, just sat at a table, just like perfectly quiet, eating a slice of pizza, being like, is it all over? Like, was it all a lie? Like all this vision for decentralized currency, like how many people were deeply impacted by believing in this vision. And at least for myself as a builder, also shared as a builder, like also heading in that direction. So, but then, you wake up the next day and it's like this too shall pass, and like all we can do is learn from each other and move the needle just a little further forward for the next generation or the next dreamer and the next builder until we finally hopefully arrive.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I had a very calm life before I did crypto full time, basically before I went to study. But to be honest, I also wouldn't want to change it back, because at the same time, all the upside of working with great people, meeting very smart people, being able to to travel also, that's a big aspect in crypto also, right? You just get to travel a lot if you work full time in the industry. So I think the benefits outweigh the kind of like mental challenges that come with it sometimes, given that everything is just so fast moving and crazy news happen all the time. But in the end of the day, I think it was the right choice for me to like just go all in on crypto. And yeah, I don't regret it.
Well, I know there's thousands of people that have been introduced to Cosmos through your YouTube videos. So as
Yeah.
as someone who knows people who some of their first experience with Cosmos with your videos, I would say thank you. And yes, I believe in my heart that it was we're very happy that you're here.
Yeah, thanks, man. And that's also like a big motivator. You know, we did, for example, last year at ETH Denver, we did Atom Denver, and there were like so many people that came up to me and it's like, hey, I watch your videos. It's so amazing to meet you. And, you know, I got into osmosis super early and this and that. I got an airdrop, right? I think this is like really what's, in the end of the day, also like my purpose with this is to help people to navigate through crypto, through this crypto madness. I obviously try to be as, you know, as neutral and as honest about the space as possible, even though I'm very excited about it. But yeah, I think the results, you know, like I mentioned, and there's a lot of people that text me or that I meet, also at Cosmos, obviously, that's really a big motivator for me. So yeah, thanks also for your kind words and, you know, all the builders that have been on my channel that I got to interview, that where I also learned a lot about the technology and the infrastructure. That's like a big purpose of what I do.
100%. And as we close out here, first off, thank you for your time. But I think it would be appropriate, since as you're someone who's impacted many a community member, we'll open up the final 8 minutes. This is your chance to ask CryptoCito any questions about his journey or his thoughts. So feel free to raise your hand. Would love to see some participation from anyone.
Yeah, I was going to say that Sandy Toes looks like their hand is up, so I will bring them up really quick. You should be on stage. Welcome. Looks like you're currently on mute, but
Hi. I don't know if it's okay to speak.
Yep.
yeah,
Thank you so much.
absolutely.
I just want to say thank you again. And yes, CryptoCito is the reason I got into the Cosmos. You know, it was like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and CryptoCito continued making those informative videos. Not only did I find myself in here, but I became an NFT artist. I became a community builder, and meeting CryptoCito at Cosmoverse, as well as all the other amazing people, the validators, and I just learned so much because there's a lot of social influencers that are paid, and you know, it's just, you know, this whole rug pull business. But and it is you have to have thick skin, right? There's a lot of potholes and things that happen. So I just want to show my appreciation for CryptoCito and said, yes, I was devastated. There's been some things that have happened, but I've never given up. And this is the future. So thank you very much. And thank you for holding these spaces.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy, for these very kind words. And it was really cool to meet you at Cosmos and hope to see you again this year.
Oh, for sure. Habibi, you're going to see me in Istanbul for sure.
There we go. We're going to have a shisha in Istanbul.
Perfect. Thank you, Sandy. Well, if anybody else has any questions, I don't currently see any raised hands, but if you do have questions, please feel free to come up and ask. I was gonna mention while we wait, Cito, I saw your tweet about having the phone not in the room when you sleep, and I've actually adopted that as well, just because of the Twitter and Telegram and Discord nonsense that happens. It's been a life changer to plug my phone in the kitchen, leave it there, and then be able to have the quiet space of my room when I sleep.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I've been doing this over the past years for like, you know, 2 weeks in a row, but then I would, you know, stop doing it for whatever reason. But it's just so much different. And I think also the fact that, you know, sometimes when you have it next to your bed and it's like 2:30 a.m. and you just wake up for a few minutes and you just check your phone for a few minutes and then you end up half an hour scrolling through the latest Cosmos DP drama and proposal, right? It's like, it just messes with your brain. And I think, yeah, it's highly recommend everybody to like just put your phone away, don't bring it to your bedroom, leave it outside and just sleep. You will sleep much better.
Yeah, 100%. I know Fisco's very much so a big proponent of separating yourself from your technology and allowing yourself to kind of exist without it. But yeah, it's a big difference. And like you said, when your life gets super busy because you've stepped into a space like this, you kind of get the quiet back, and the relaxation when you separate technology.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, which is a hard thing, honestly, in crypto, because everything is just digital, right? All our meetings, all our conversations, everything is in the digital world, and it's very hard to disconnect, as we talked earlier. Very hard, but it's necessary. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't see anybody else with their hands up, and I know for a fact that Carter, Fisco, and I all have a call in 3 minutes here. So I think we will. I think we'll jump off like 2 or 3 minutes early. But I just want to say, Cito, thank you for jumping on. It's always great to have you on Spaces. It's always great to have conversations with you and just about your knowledge of the space because you've been around for so long. And invited so many people to learn about the cosmos as well. And I know Carter and Fisco also enjoy talking to you as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it and enjoyed talking with you guys and also that format. So yeah, because in crypto also most conversations are just about when is your coin going up, when airdrop, when this, when that, right? But sometimes it's good to talk also on a personal level. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks,
Yeah.
dude.
Have a good one, CryptoCito. Everyone, be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube, of course, if you haven't, and give CryptoCito a follow. And hope you guys have a wonderful Wednesday wherever you are in the world. And as we always like to say, there's plenty of room in the shade. Have a good one, guys.
Cheers.
Perfect. Thanks,
Cheers.
everyone. And you can come join our Shade Community Hours in our Discord. They start right after this. So jump in our Discord. A couple moderators and a couple team members will be there as well. But yeah, make sure to follow CryptoCito. Make sure to subscribe to his YouTube channel. And as always, make sure to follow us, Shade_Protocol. And we will be back here the same time next week.